Journey back to the Fortress of Fury with the second installment in the top-down run-and-gun miniseries. The first game in this series was the thoroughly excellent 1991 release Fortified Zone and came out worldwide. The third and final part of the trilogy is also pretty well known. Operation Logic Bomb came out on the Super Nintendo in 1993. However, the second game in the series is reasonably unheard of, seeing as it was released exclusively for the Game Boy in Japan. A curious decision that is made all the stranger based on the fact that it's probably the best out of the three. Fortified Zone saw you play as a pair of mercenaries who had to infiltrate a literal fortified zone, battling enemy soldiers, robots and turrets before eventually penetrating and destroying the core of the facility. I would definitely recommend going back and reading the review, and playing the game if you've yet to do so, because it is up there with the best of 1991. Following their success in that mission, the protagonists Masato and Mizuki are back again, tasked with more of the same. Straight off the bat, let us address certain improvements that were made between the first and second games. Possibly the first thing you'll notice is, instead of movement being restricted to 4 cardinal directions, you can now move diagonally as well. Whereas before the male character, Masato, could use a range of sub-weapons, these no longer exist. Instead, the standard weapon has been augmented to now offer a selection of 3 different weapons. One, a very fast auto-firing machine gun that you'll probably use the most, a slower but wider spreading shotgun, and also a grenade launcher. Both characters can use all 3 weapons now as well. It's simply a case of switching weapons using the select button. They all have infinite ammo, and all come in handy depending on what is going on. For example, certain rooms are not accessible unless you blow a hole in the wall using the grenade launcher. Some enemies are much easier to hit using the spread shot, whereas some rooms are so replete with enemies that you'll want to go in there with just the standard machine gun, which fires at a very rapid rate. Another thing I noticed pretty early on is that the enemy AI seems to have been improved, in that they don't just traipse back and forward across a predetermined path. They actually will attempt to target you and attack. The original pair of characters are present in the game, each with their own health bar as before. The differences between the characters are more subtle here due to the lack of sub-weapons. Really, the only difference is the trade-off between health and maneuverability. It is certainly fair to say that you'll be playing as Masato most of the time, as his health bar is a lot bigger. Mizuki uses the A button to jump, which enables you to access areas that Masato cannot on his own. She also moves at a faster pace. Don't be surprised if you gravitate to the male character more though, as he's just more of a tank. Situated through the levels are these crates in which you might find health packs, or alternatively keys which you need to find in order to progress. Full clearing the maps isn't necessary as such because you don't get any bonuses or anything like that, but you might miss out on health drops and so on. Fortified Zone boasted a very well put together soundtrack, and the sequel is no different. In fact, not only is the composition up to the same very high standard, featuring some signature motifs as well, but seems to actually be programmed more effectively, making the soundtrack even better than before. The sound effects when firing the weapons is as good as you'll get on the Game Boy. They have some real oomph to them. Graphically, the screen is used incredibly economically, the map is very easy to understand, which helps navigation throughout the levels immensely. Speaking of level layouts, a notable addition with Ikari 2 is that the levels are spread over more than one floor, which wasn't the case before. This really adds to the feeling of exploration. Be wary that there are several pitfalls that you can fall into, which will take you down to the floor below, and in fact this is something that you have to do at certain points in the game to access areas that you otherwise can't get to. If you want a more immersive experience featuring both protagonists at the same time, you can. With a link cable, you can actually play this game 2-player, which I really hope to try at some point. I just don't know anyone who also has a copy of this game. When a team took an already excellent game and made almost every aspect of it that little bit greater, it creates some of the most pleasing work available. That this was a Japanese exclusive is a completely baffling and infuriating fact, as it's one of the best action shooters on the whole system. Phenomenal.